From the War Journals of Fleet Commander Varn of the Gorsian Hegemony. Date marker 87.12 F441. I record these observations not as excuses for our defeat, but as warnings for any who might contemplate war with the humans in the future. I have fought 17 campaigns across 12 star systems. I have faced the telepathic shock troops of the Mornish Collective and survived an ambush by the dreaded Void Walkers of Ceti Alpha. None of these prepared me for humanity. My first encounter with human military forces came during our expansion into what we believed was unclaimed territory in the Sickness Arm. Our initial intelligence suggested minimal resistance, a few scattered colonies with basic defensive capabilities, a straightforward campaign to secure resources for the glory of the hegemony. How utterly wrong we were. Part I, the Marines. Our first planetfall on the colony world of New Montana should have been simple. Standard orbital bombardment followed by dropship deployment of pacification units. We had overwhelming numerical superiority and technological advantages that had served us well in previous conquests. The humans had other ideas. Their defensive response was immediate and precisely coordinated. Before half our dropships reached the surface, ground-based railgun emplacements activated, launching kinetic projectiles with shocking accuracy. 27 vessels lost in the first attack wave alone. They're using primitive projectile weapons, my tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking in what I now recognize was premature confidence. Kinetic only, no energy signatures. I remember actually laughing, at the thought of a species still using physical projectiles in an age of plasma weaponry and quantum disruption fields. That laughter died when I witnessed the aftermath of our first ground engagement. The human defenders called themselves Marines. They wore armor that appeared woefully inadequate by hegemony standards, simple composite plating with minimal energy shielding. Their weapons fired metallic slugs, accelerated by chemical propellants rather than the elegant plasma weapons of a proper civilization. Yet they fought with an intensity that defied logical explanation. These Marines advanced through our fire without hesitation. When their primitive weapons overheated, they attached bladed implements and continued fighting at close quarters. When their armor failed, they fought through injuries that would incapacitate any Gorsian warrior. When outnumbered, they adapted with terrifying speed, using terrain features and improvised explosives to devastating effect. "We won't they retreat," my ground commander transmitted during the third day of fighting. "We've destroyed their primary defensive positions. We've cut off their supply lines, yet they continue to attack." I had no answer then. I understand now. Humans evolved on what we would classify as a death world. A planet so hostile that every day is a fight for survival. Their bodies are walking chemical factories, producing compounds that allow them to ignore pain, to push beyond normal physical limitations. They can go days without sleep, can continue fighting with injuries that should be fatal, can adapt to almost any environment. But it's not merely their biology that makes them formidable, it's their mindset. After capturing a Marine officer during our 6th day on New Montana, I personally conducted the interrogation. I expected to extract valuable intelligence about their defensive capabilities. Instead, I received my first lesson in human psychology. "You'll never take this planet," the human said, despite being restrained and injured. There was no fear in his voice, only absolute certainty. "Your forces are depleted," I informed him. "Your defensive positions have fallen. Resistance is futile." The human actually smiled. A disconcerting baring of teeth that I would later learn is not always a sign of aggression in their species. "You think numbers matter? You think position matters? Let me tell you something about Marines, Bugface. We don't know how to quit. You'll have to kill every last one of us, and the moment you think you've won, that's when you'll meet the real nightmare." I dismissed his words as bravado, the desperate posturing of a defeated enemy. 3 days later, I understood what he meant. Part 2. The Knights. It began with anomalous energy readings on our sensor arrays, quantum fluctuations that our science division couldn't explain, then communications disruptions that spread through our command networks like a virus. By the time we detected the new ships entering the system, it was too late. They were unlike any human vessels we had encountered before, sleeker, faster, leaving trails of blue energy that our targeting systems couldn't properly track. They didn't move like normal ships bound by physics. They danced through our defensive formations as if space itself bent to accommodate them. "We're detecting approximately 20 vessels," my sensor officer reported, his voice elevated to a pitch I had never heard before. "But, Commander, the energy output? It's impossible. Each ship is generating power equivalent to a small star." Before I could process this information, a transmission cut through our encrypted channels with contemptuous ease. The voice that filled my command center carried a curious vocal pattern. What I would later learn was called a drawl in human linguistics. "Attention Gorsian vessels, this is Colonel Johnny Blackwater of the Texas Knights. Y'all are currently occupying a planet under our protection. We're giving you one chance to withdraw your forces and leave this system. Otherwise, we'll have to show you some genuine Texas hospitality." The casual tone, the almost friendly delivery of what was clearly a threat confused my officers. Several looked to me for guidance, mandibles twitching in uncertainty. "Establish visual communication," I ordered, composing myself. "I want to see these knights." The view screen activated, and I found myself facing a human male seated in what appeared to be a command chair. Unlike the Marines we had encountered, he wore distinctive armor that pulsed with blue energy patterns. Most peculiar was the head covering he wore, a wide-brimmed hat that seemed completely unsuitable for combat. At his side hung a weapon that resembled a primitive cutting tool rather than a proper military sidearm. "Colonel Blackwater," I acknowledged. "I am Fleet Commander Varn of the Gorsian hegemony. This system falls within our expansion territory. We have no quarrel with your knights, but we will not withdraw." The human's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "Well now, that's disappointing to hear. I was hoping we could resolve this without getting impolite." He touched the brim of his strange hat. "But if that's your final answer, I reckon we'll have to proceed with the demonstration." Before I could respond, the transmission cut. My tactical officer's voice rose in alarm. "Commander, the night vessels are accelerating toward our fleet. Their weapon systems are—" "I don't understand these readings. They're generating quantum disruption fields that our shields can't—" He never finished that sentence. 3 of our frontline destroyers simply ceased to exist, not destroyed in the conventional sense. There were no explosions, no debris. They simply disappeared, leaving behind only dissipating patterns of blue energy. "Evasive maneuvers," I ordered, but our ships seemed sluggish, unresponsive. The quantum disruption was affecting not just our shields but our drive systems as well. What followed was not a battle. It was a systematic dismantling of the most powerful fleet the hegemony had ever assembled. The Knights moved through our formation with impossible precision. Their ships didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, they projected cascading fields of blue energy that simply negated anything they touched. Where those fields passed, our technology failed, weapons offline, engines dead. In some cases, entire vessels phased partially out of normal space, leaving behind twisted hulks of metal with crew members embedded in bulkheads that had suddenly occupied the same space as their bodies. And through it all, that same calm voice continued to transmit on all frequencies. "Y'all should have taken the offer to leave peaceful-like. This is what happens when you threaten folks under our protection. Nothing personal, understand. Just the way things have to be." I ordered a full retreat, abandoning our ground forces on New Montana. It was the hardest decision of my career, but I knew with absolute certainty that remaining meant the complete destruction of my fleet. As we limped away, emergency drives straining to put distance between us and those terrible blue fields, a final transmission came through. Commander Varn, this is Colonel Blackwater again. You made the wise choice. When you get home, be sure to let your hegemony know something important. These colonies ain't just protected by regular human forces. They're under the watchful eyes of Texas. And we don't take kindly to uninvited guests. Part the retreat. I spent the journey back to hegemony space reviewing every scrap of data we had managed to salvage from the encounter. Most of our sensor logs were corrupted, as if the very quantum fluctuations generated by the Knights had retroactively damaged our recording systems. But fragments remained, and within those fragments, I began to understand what we had faced. The Knights' technology defied conventional scientific principles. Their quantum spurs, the distinctive blue energy trails that followed their movements, didn't just disrupt our systems, they rewrote local physics. The energy signatures we detected weren't produced by any power source we could comprehend. It was as if they had found a way to encode something intangible, something our sensors identified as pattern anomalies, directly into quantum matrices. More disturbing were the ground reports from the few survivors we managed to extract. Knights had deployed to the surface during our retreat, and the accounts from those who witnessed them in combat bordered on the mystical. Warriors whose steps left burning blue trails across the battlefield, bladed weapons that cut through our most advanced armor as if it were fabric. Most unsettling were the reports of Knights moving in perfect synchronization despite no visible communication systems, their attacks harmonizing in ways that created localized reality distortions. One survivor, a veteran of 7 campaigns, described it thus: "They didn't fight like soldiers, they fought like forces of nature. When 2 or more moved together, the world itself seemed to bend around them. My weapon overloaded when I tried to target one. It was as if my energy rifle suddenly couldn't remember how to function." After weeks of analysis, my science division presented a theory so outlandish I nearly had them court-martialed for incompetence. The Knights' technology wasn't just advanced, it somehow incorporated non-physical components. Elements that our instruments registered as emotion patterns and experiential data were somehow encoded directly into their quantum matrices. In essence, they had found a way to weaponize their spirits. Part 4. The Understanding. When our battered fleet finally reached hegemony space, I expected to be executed for our failure. Instead, I was summoned to High Command for a classified briefing. There I learned we were not the first to encounter the Texas Knights. 3 other expansion fleets had suffered similar defeats. 2 had been completely destroyed. We were the only ones who had the wisdom, or cowardice depending on one's perspective, to retreat before annihilation. High Command had assembled every scrap of intelligence on these Knights, including historical data acquired through infiltration of human information networks. What they revealed changed my understanding of humanity forever. The Knights originated from a region of Earth called Texas, a particularly hostile part of an already deadly planet. Their culture had evolved around principles of self-reliance, personal honor, and absolute determination in the face of adversity. When humans began exploring the stars, these Texans brought their cultural framework with them. Then came their quantum breakthrough. Earth scientists discovered that quantum particles could be entangled with human neural patterns, creating technology that responded not just to physical commands, but to intention, emotion, and intuition. Most civilizations would have implemented this discovery through rigid protocols and standardized applications. The Texans took a different approach. They integrated quantum technology with their existing cultural symbols, particularly items called spurs, traditionally worn on their foot. Each Knight's quantum spurs were uniquely calibrated to their neural patterns, creating unpredictable but devastatingly effective energy signatures. More importantly, this technology was designed to be passed down through generations, with each successive user adding their experiences to the quantum matrix. In essence, the briefing officer explained, every Knight carries the accumulated experience and determination of their predecessors encoded in the very technology they wield. They don't just have superior weapons, They have weapons enhanced by the collective will of generations of warriors. High Command's conclusion was sobering. The hegemony would no longer expand into any system with known human presence. The risk of encountering knights was deemed too great to justify any potential resource gain. My final orders were explicit: document everything I had witnessed for future reference, then accept reassignment to a remote administrative post where my failure would not remind others of our humiliation. Part 5. The Reflection. As I prepare to depart for my new assignment on the fringes of hegemony space, I find myself reflecting on what I learned about humanity, and particularly about these knights. We had always considered ourselves superior because of our technological advancement. We measured civilization by the elegance of our energy weapons, the efficiency of our shield generators, the computational power of our tactical systems. The humans, especially the knights, showed us our fundamental error. Their strength never came from technology alone. It came from something we had engineered out of our species generations ago in the name of efficiency and rationality: spirit. Our scientists still cannot explain how quantum matrices can be influenced by something as intangible as determination or courage. Our tactical experts cannot model combat scenarios where the effectiveness of a weapon depends on the emotional state of its wielder. Our strategists cannot develop countermeasures against forces that adapt not through computational analysis, but through sheer, unquantifiable will. The Texan Knights defeated us not because their technology was superior, but because they brought something to the battlefield that we had forgotten existed. The unbreakable spirit of warriors evolved on a Deathworld, enhanced by quantum technology that amplified rather than replaced their essential humanity. I close this journal with a warning to any who might read it in the future. If you value your existence, do not provoke the humans. And if you see warriors with blue fire trailing from their boots and ancient-style weapons at their sides, do not hesitate. Retreat immediately. You are not facing merely another military force. You are facing the Texas Knights, and they have weaponized something more powerful than any technology. They have weaponized their very soul. Final entry: War Journal of Fleet Commander Varn, deceased. This journal was recovered from Commander Varn's quarters after his apparent suicide. The hegemony has classified its contents at the highest level. Any unauthorized access is punishable by immediate termination. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.